William Ruto would have actually made better engagement of his energies and in his tactics if he was to be a preacher. Because you know, some of the preachers we know, they are rotten. But in their course of preaching, so many people are saved. And God may save them because of the fact that he saved so many souls. But when it comes to political game plan, he is the worst that Kenyans can ever have. You must see the log in your eyes before you see the speck in somebody's eye.
Very well.
Western Hotel should be handed over to the public. 1,600 acres should be handed over to the public. And that is where you can start affordable housing in Nairobi.
And you're just in time for Business Glide, your go-to point on matters public policy analysis, business and economics at large. Hosted by yours truly, son of the soil, resident economist here, Richard Mwenjo. Indeed, it's always a pleasure and true delight to have you on board. Now, to help me unpack the day's conversation is none other than the only point of call on matters economic analysis, the first of his name, former Minister Ruto Arab Kiro, in a sparkling white shirt. What informs your fashion, sir? You're looking really great.
Well, you know, white means peace. And I'm praying for our country to have more peace. Our areas of the North Rift, especially Baringo, on Sunday, the last Sunday, in a GCC church, we were able to pray for the people of Baringo to have genuine peace and a durable mutual understanding.
Very well.
This is something that I always want to encourage among our people, that peace is paramount. You can have everything right, but if you do not have peace, you're likely to run the risk of destroying even the little that we've been able to build for the last 60 years.
Well enough. And actually, white still represents some sense of transparency. And that informs the premise of our conversation today, our transparency in dealing with public funds and resources meant for the citizens. Perhaps why the conversation about the government's effort towards fighting graft and other issues in the world of business, economics and finance. But let's start with matters to do with the government's effort to fight graft, and one that has to do with reclaiming all lost public land to grabbers. And we've seen the government put a spirited fight, especially getting those lands in which it wants to establish the affordable housing units. And let me ask you, there are those who believe that this is a selective application of justice. The big fish are not being chased after, it's only the small people in government or outside government. But let me ask you from a general standpoint, how better can we actually go and address the conversation about fighting graft in Kenya?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Previously, the issue of land, which is very emotive, given the fact that the foundation of land allocation in Kenya resides with the Crown. The Crown meaning the government of the day. And subsequent to that, Commissioner of Lands is just an agent of the Crown. And therefore, any allocation that is done by the Commissioner ought to have the express authority of the government of the day. In that case, one has to be careful on how he navigates the issues of land, because you can try to make amends to what you believe is wrong, only to realize that you had some vested interest in making those amends. And this is something very fundamental. Personally, I've not had the privilege of benefiting from land allocation, what they call direct allocation by the government of the day. Any parcels of land that I've had, either I bought it directly from the owners or I've taken loan. And I took one time AFC loan. I bought some land, parcel of land in Kitale. And where I am today, I've been able to expand from what my father gave me to make it slightly bigger than what it was. And of course, I have parcels of land elsewhere in Nakuru and also in Narok, in Kajiado. So when it comes to issues of land, I've also that affinity towards land. But the affinity or appetite should not be exceeded by moral obligation that what you own, you must be able to justify. Now, there are some allocations that were done by President Moi. There were allocations that were done by the crown, the queen, or the king at a particular time. For example, in the 40s and 50s, parcels of land, be it in Kidhunguri, all the way to Nyandarua, all the way to Trans Nzoia, all the way to Uasin Gishu, all the way to Narok, Timau in Meru, all those parcels of land were given to the settlers who came to Kenya after the Second World War. Those were seen to be genuine land, and that's why, in his own wisdom, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta decided that there was nothing for nothing. And there was what they were calling SFT, which in the long form is Settlement Fund Trustee, where the British government gave us money, and that money was given to the settlers on the understanding that they will surrender the parcels of land plus the developments inherent in them. Because many Africans were complaining that why are we buying land, and yet these British came and appropriated this land. But the argument of the government of the day at that particular time is that you are not buying land. You are purchasing the improvements, the developments that have been done, whether it is laying of water pipes, whether it is building of the cattle dip, whether it's building of the Mzungu house, and even the livestock inside, and even the trees that had been planted. That was the understanding at that particular time. That's why I say in the wisdom, because we did not go the Zimbabwe way. Mzee Kenyatta, I remember when he was addressing some settlers in Nakuru, he told them, you have a right to stay here, and if you choose to go, you will go like any other Kenyan who wants to leave Kenya. But you will not be going because you do not have space to live in Kenya. And that process was midwifed in a way that any Mzungu that had land, whether it was in Kitale, whether it was in Timau, whether it was in Nyandarua, whether it was in Mosop constituency in Nandi, whether it was in Nandi Hills, they were given parcels of, they were given money as compensation for the developments they had gotten into. Fast forward, President Moi took over, and for the period he was the president, he was also able to give some kind of favors to certain individuals through the Commission of Lands. Remember, the president does not allocate, but he gives instructions to the Commission of Lands, who is an agent of the state or the crown at that particular time before independence. And so many parcels of ADC land were given to certain individuals. Some belonged to the prisons, some to the forest department. And before doing that, if it belonged to the forest department, they were first alienated to ease off the forest and allocate land to the individuals identified by the power of the day. In that allocation, our good brother, the Honorable William Ruto, was given 1,600 acres within Nairobi, which initially was supposed to be part of the sewage plant. And he took it, and later on it was discovered that it was supposed to be public. So it was reversed by the immediate former president and gazetted for public
utilities.
Utility. Now, when President Ruto took over, it was one of the first assignments to return what was reversed to himself. 1,600 acres within Ruai. Is it Ruai? In Nairobi.
You know better.
Now, the second issue is Western Hotel. It belonged to Kenya Airways Airports Authority.
KAA.
KAA. And it is said it was allocated to somebody. And that somebody sold to the then either deputy president or earlier, when he was still a member of parliament, and he bought it, and he was calling it he was calling it an innocent buyer. Now, if the government of the day, under William Ruto, wants to do any reverse of the ills of the past, the two parcels must first deck the first hammer.
Charity begins at home.
Charity begins at home. That means it begins with you. You must see the log in your eyes before you see the speck in somebody's eye.
Very well.
Western Hotel should be handed over to the public. 1,600 acres should be handed over to the public, and that is where you can start affordable housing in Nairobi. Anything else, we need to be careful, and we need to visit the Ndungu report. Ndungu report was more thorough in identifying who needs what it means, so that when we go through that due process, we're able to see so many innocent people who in the process were conned, who in the process were genuinely allocated, but somebody else took advantage of that and created the situation that we are in. So this land issue is very emotive. This land issue is very challenging, and that's why I do declare my own position that I'm not an allotee of any parcel of land unless somebody has allotted without my knowledge to me. But today, as I'm here with you, Richard, the parcels of land I have in Trans Nzoia, in Uasin Gishu, in Nakuru, in Kajiado, and in Nairobi, because I own 1 or 2 units of parcels of land.
You can account for them.
I can account for them. Yeah, some of them I took loan, some of them I sold my maize, and some of them I sold my livestock, and so forth.
None
and
of that was given to you as a gift?
Oh, none. Who can gift you anything?
Basil Criticus did that.
To
someone.
To someone. You know, that parcel of land we know, it was done in lieu of an AFC loan that was written off officially. I also wrote off billions of shillings, close to 2.7 billion, but I never asked for any gift. I have enough examples, but it's not for this conversation.
For the next conversation, maybe.
Next time.
So then, what do you describe the flattening of houses belonging to, say, former CS, Amina Mohammed, and many other land homeowners whom the houses have been flattened in the name of paving way for affordable housing? Does that describe Ruto as a president of double standards and matters to do with political deceit in the name of fighting graft?
You know, I've always told you, William Ruto would have actually made better engagement of his energies and in his tactics if he was to be a preacher. Because, you know, some of the preachers we know, they are rotten. But in their course of preaching, so many people are saved. And God may save them because of the fact that he saved so many souls. But when it comes to political game plan, he is the worst that Kenyans can ever have today or in the past.
Are you then saying that most of the time he speaks to the convenience of the moment?
Well, yeah, you know, he rises with the occasion. He's able to convince you when he himself is not convinced. Because he could have started by saying, Western, I'm handing over to the state. These 1,600 acres, I'm surrendering, or he can even surrender now. He's still got the opportunity to surrender now as a way of showing that, yes, I'm above reproach. But there are many other things, but we don't want to make his name a subject of our discussion.
True.
But let him be clean, come out clean when it comes to some of these things. Why should you punish people? Why should you, like the ones in Kitale, the prison's land, the former president gave to those people. I never got even a parcel of it. I was an MP then. And for that particular period, I knew there was some land being given 20 acres to a number of people. But I chose to go to AFC, applied for a loan, 4 million. I bought land. I paid the loan, which moved from 4 million to 15 million. And I was able to pay in a period of more than 10 years. So some of these things, let's really not pretend. And let us understand that life is so short that in the next 20 years, some of the people we are talking about will not be around. Or if they are around, they'll be totally irrelevant and almost looking for refuge in the sanctuary of the state.
almost looking for refuge in the sanctuary of the state.
Yep.
Moving on swiftly, let me ask you, your tenure as a public servant transcended several decades, and it begs the question, oftentimes, do people get into public service informed by the insatiable appetite for primitive accumulation of wealth, or that is a trend that we are seeing in the recent years? It wasn't there in your days.
Well, you know, it's so tempting because you see, even when we use the principle of realism, they say man is born evil. And a man, whenever he gets an opportunity, wants to make money or to create wealth. And when he creates that wealth, he wants to use it to subdue the rest. You know, that is a basic understanding of the principle of realism. The good book, the Bible says, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, which means that sin in us that makes you have excess appetite for what does not belong to you is inherent in us. What an intelligent person ought to do is to manage his sin of excess appetite, to manage his sin of extra ego, to manage his sin of hatred for those who do not belong to the same class as he is, to manage his sin on what we believe against tribalism, to manage his sin against hating others who do not belong to the same community as you are, and also learning to be as truthful as you can. You know, because the book and that principle of realism, which is one of the international principles, have assisted to inform me that even me, I'm not blameless. I have some measure of blame. At times I get annoyed with some people, and in the process I almost hate them, not knowing that they are victims of a problem. And Richard, I'm not a preacher, but I want Kenyans to accept the fact that don't carry a burden that is not yours. What do I mean by the burden? If I hate you and I don't like you, that is my burden, because at the time I hear the name Richard, whether it is Richard Busiene or Richard Mwenja, I hate to hear that. And that means I'm carrying a burden that is not mine, which means I'm subjecting my heart to extra conditions beyond its capacity. And the good doctors tell us, the moment you are sleeping with a bit of anxiety, the moment you are sleeping with a bit of annoyance, the moment you are sleeping with a bit of hate, you are carrying a burden that can destroy your own well-being.
It can crush you.
It can crush you. So those who live with hate, those who live with malice, who enjoy, you've seen some people, when something malicious is said about somebody else, they laugh so heartily until the tears come out, because they themselves are sadists. They are narcissists. You know, you've been told that somebody, and some people in Tanzania, they say ubenda kiki. Kiki is to be given extra praise beyond your own capacity, and they love it, they relish it. And those people, the opposite is that when somebody else is suffering, that is when they derive the most glee out of that satisfaction.
Human suffering.
Human suffering. And that's why the people are being taken to Haiti.
Very well. And let me ask you this. Now that you're talking matters graft and trying to turn around the situation, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this government's efforts towards fighting graft? Is it worthy the praise on the fight against graft? And what would be a score for them?
Well, I would not want to engage my mind in even scoring them. It's a total disaster.
It is?
They should not even be talking about fighting graft. What they should do is to do nothing, say nothing, and manage their offices. Because how would you explain that you have to look for Ndindi Nyoro, pair him with a PS in charge of immigration for us to get passports? Aren't you telling us that you are dealing with a corrupt system? How would you explain why even school fees for a school in Kablamai that you have to pay through e-citizen?
Yeah.
Aren't you worried about thieves because you are also a thief? You know, these are some of the things that we must. When did the president become the auditor of Kablamai Secondary School?
When?
When did he become? Yeah. Does he have capacity to audit anything?
But maybe his hands are tied because he did found empty coffers. And maybe even the talk about graft in the system is not there because there's nothing to steal. Do you support that conversation? Because some think that way.
You are an economist, you know better than I do. That treasury does not keep money the way you keep money in your phone or in the bank. Treasury, as it receives revenue, it must exude expenditure to certain dockets of expenses. So there is no money that you can say the coffers were empty. Really, you don't give, you don't keep liquid money, in treasury. It is a question of just balancing here and there. But keeping, talking about empty coffers or 92 million, 93 million, really is child play.
It is child play.
Yeah.
That point by the firebrand himself, Ruto Arap takes us to the wrap of this conversation today, talking matters the government's effort towards fighting graft and whether they are worthy the praise in that particular pursuit. He has actually said that the government is actually trying, but not trying to the best level towards addressing the subject. And he calls for more action from the government and also for our citizens to be alert and really play a huge part in turning around the fortunes of Kenya. Time now for our Fun of the Week. It is none other than our very own videographer and crew here, Maureen Gare, who is celebrating her birthday, and I give the distinguished honor to Ruto Arap to wish her a happy birthday. Maureen Gare.
Hi, Maureen Gare. Happy birthday, my sister. I wish you well. When you get back, let us just share a cake. Thank you.
What do you want her to get you from Mombasa? She's in Mombasa.
Herself.
Well, there you have it. Until next time on Business Glide, it's always a pleasure to have you on board. Remember, this is the #1 show on matters public policy, business and economics. So how about we advance this conversation further? You can only do that by going to my social media handle at Mwenja Richard on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok, you name it, and keep that conversation going further. Tell us what you want to hear from us next, and also your feedback on the conversation of the day. Trust you me, Ruto Arap is our resident analyst on the channel, and there's much more to come from him. He's an elder, and he knows much better than we do. Until next time, God bless. Enjoy your day.